Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And this is the podcast where every week we review a classic pro wrestling weekly TV show.
And that classic pro wrestling weekly TV show could be from pretty much anything throughout the entire history of pro wrestling, which if you've been listening to this season of this podcast, you definitely know that well because we've run the gamut through the decades, through the continents, through the states, the territories, the countries, all of the above. And this week's show, Jeremy, we're hitting a territory that is near and dear to my other podcast partner's heart. This is Mid-Atlantic Wrestling.
That's right. And a quick aside before we get into this show, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. Let's for those new listeners to the program, how this works is we didn't just choose to watch Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, which is something we absolutely would choose if we were in control.
Without a doubt.
However, we are not. We've scoured the internet and we've dumped thousands and thousands of hours of content. We dumped all those titles into the randomizer, and we fire up the randomizer, and it, like the title says, at random, picks a show for us to watch. Season 1 was big, main pay-per-views, large events. You can go back and listen in the archives. Those shows are just as fresh as the day we put them out. And Season 2, it's all weekly TV shows. So, yeah, this is how the show works. It's just randomly chosen, and we've been randomly assigned to watch Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling from November 3rd, 1984. A little bit about Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling from Dick Bourne and David Chappelle. By January 1974, Jim Crockett Promotions, now led by Jim Crockett Jr., had effectively switched all references to the promotion to be the name Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. The main television show now bore that name, as opposed to its earlier designations as either All-Star Wrestling or Championship Wrestling.
Because there weren't enough territories using All-Star Wrestling, as we've learned on this podcast in this season.
Also significant is that the promotion's regional titles were renamed the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight and Mid-Atlantic Tag Team Championships during the last months of 1973 from their previous designations of Eastern Heavyweight and Atlantic Coast Tag Team, respectively. In December of 1986, the Mid-Atlantic Heavyweight title was vacated for good, and the television show that was Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling would be renamed NWA Pro Wrestling. Jim Crockett Promotions at that point had begun expanding nationally to compete with Vince McMahon and the World Wrestling Federation, and there was no longer a regional component or reference to the Mid-Atlantic area. So 2 years before the territory was brought into just the national promotion, this was 1984 here, so 2 years prior, we've got the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling TV show. We get a funky intro. Good music, good start.
We sure do. We should also mention that if you're interested in hearing a previous podcast from the two of us about Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, go back to the show in Season 1 with the Boogie Jam, the NWA Mid-Atlantic Boogie Jam show, main evented by a Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat match a little bit earlier in 1984.
Absolutely. One of my favorite shows that we watched was the Boogie Jam.
Outside of those weird random camera angles, remember that? Especially in the first few matches where it just felt like it was on some timed camera switching and that really made no sense, and some of the camera angles are just horrendous. Thankfully, here on this show, as we're going to talk about, much more of a polished television production. Very different, though, and I'll definitely have some thoughts on this. Very different from a lot of the weekly TV that was more studio generated, as this is in an actual proper arena of sorts.
Right, but it tried to have its cake and eat it
Yes.
too, where it would have the matches were in an arena setting, but it had the feeling of the studio area where they were doing interviews, promos, and etc. So
yes, with the backdrop, but without a desk.
No desk.
Which is interesting. No desk, but the step and repeat sort of backdrop, the classic NWA Mid-Atlantic backdrop, and our host, our commentator, really the only voice we hear other than the wrestlers, with one exception and a few points throughout the show, is the great Bob Caudle. The second I heard his voice, I knew I was in for an enjoyable hour of pro wrestling television.
As was I, but not being an avid watcher of Mid-Atlantic, I wasn't sure that Bob Caudle was up for carrying the whole show, because I know him from when he would be Jim Ross's partner on the big shows
in his later years.
7,
8 years later. So yeah, understandable. You may have thought that he wasn't up for the task, but I thought we'll get to it. I thought he was fantastic here.
Absolutely.
Particularly given the format of this show, which will obviously reveal itself as we go along and reviewing it. Very interview heavy, very guiding you through storylines heavy, and Bob Caudle is so great at that.
So after our funky intro, we are going right to the ring. That's one of the themes of this show is no real entrances.
No,
the guys
no
are
music.
Just in the ring, ready to go.
Yes, competitors in the ring, ready to wrestle. And the two competitors in this match are Dennis Brown, or as I knew him, Denny Brown, and Mark Fleming, two men who physically and even facially do not look entirely dissimilar from each other. But Denny Brown is the much more pushed wrestler of the two, and clearly the better of the two. And Bob Caudle mentions early on that Denny is the number one contender to the junior heavyweight championship.
Yeah, I don't know him as well as you, so I'll call him Dennis. All Dennis Brown early, mat wrestling, some
great
kicks.
Arm drags. It's a couple arm drags, a sequence that leads to another arm drag. And this is, again, where I know Bob Caudle already is amazing here. I just love that voice. The other thing that I note as they're jockeying for position early is that the selections, the choices of where to place the cameras, and the way the show is mic'd, they do a great job of capturing the feel of an arena show, even though
Absolutely.
This is a TV taping. They've got the hard cam, there's ringside cameras, and then they have this sort of, it's very steady, but it's a roving camera shot that is basically in the ringside area. Like at some points it'll be on one side of the ring, 5 or 6 rows back. Then maybe later in the show, it'll be on a different side of the ring, maybe 10 rows back, but it really gives you a sense here in this. It's not like it's a giant arena. It feels like it's an oversized gym or a civic center, but it actually looks and feels more like the type of building you would go to watch pro wrestling when it came to your town, rather than a TV studio.
Yeah, so after an arm bar, he hits a flying forearm and a backdrop, rolls him up with a cradle, hooking the hands, getting the pin. Dennis Brown's your victor.
Yep, the Oklahoma roll for Denny Brown, as I'll call him, gets the win. And apparently, again, it's kind of a theme throughout so many of these shows of like junior heavyweight championships existing or being talked about existing, but them really not either being a focal point or existing at all. I don't recall exactly what the status was of the junior heavyweight title here in Mid-Atlantic at this point. Maybe my longtime close personal friend Mike Sempervive, the purveyor of the Mid-Atlantic podcast, would be able to answer that question. But in any event, yes, that's the match. And then we go to the aforementioned interview area, no desk, as we said, but the NWA Mid-Atlantic backdrop behind Bob Caudle and his interviewees, the new World Tag Team Champions, Dusty Rhodes and the Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez. And I'm sure you have thoughts or clips or both here from Dusty and Manny. I will have some thoughts as well. It's not quite Ric Flair and Jesse Barr, but my God, you've got Dusty Rhodes and you've got Manny Fernandez trying so hard to kind of do a Dusty Rhodes promo, but one man is doing it and one man is not.
No, and we're recapped seeing how they won the titles by
Well,
defeating.
we're recapped. Dusty, who is in fact one half of the tag team champions, an active wrestler. Dusty is already in full commentator mode. He comes out. He's talking about unity, the American way. We came together to beat Ivan Koloff and Don Kernoodle, which, again, it's about 50-50 as to whether anyone in any territory on these shows ever gets the name Kernoodle or Kernoodle right. Here they say Kernoodle, but then Dusty throws it to the video of himself and Manny Fernandez winning the tag titles. A true pro here, a true broadcast professional.
Yeah, they show a replay of the win in the cage match, and we joined the cage match highlights with Manny Fernandez doing a splash off the top of the cage. Yes. Absolutely spectacular from Manny Fernandez. Who would have thought?
And Dusty Rhodes, and not one for hyperbole, wink wink, says, quote, Manny Fernandez went 40 to 50 feet off the top of the cage. So he also said, and I quote, we've been heavily lacerated, which is not an accurate statement. Not inaccurate, I should say. They were both heavily lacerated. He also talks about and does narration over their big double team move, a double football style tackle, double running shoulder block that is called apparently the Thundering Herd Stampede.
That's right. They do that to Kernoodle. The ref gets knocked down by Kernoodle falling backward onto him. Nikita Koloff from the outside of the ring tosses a foreign object into the ring.
We can't see which foreign object it is, by the way, because this recap, this video footage is from a major arena show, which only just has the hard camera. So we can just see something get thrown in the ring. We don't know what it is.
Kernoodle's got it. He nails Fernandez. He misses Dusty. Dusty then with a bionic elbow grabs the weapon, nails Ivan Koloff. Fernandez falls on top for the 3 count.
Well, he nails Ivan Koloff as Ivan has Manny Fernandez in the Cobra clutch. So as he hits him with the object, Ivan relinquishes the hold. Manny, who is already going out from the Cobra clutch, falls on top of Ivan. The referee counts 3. Gets the win, and the highlight of this is Dusty Rhodes going nuts on commentary over his own win. It's just highly entertaining. And I write, and again, I say this as someone who's a fan of Manny Fernandez. Actually met him not that long ago, a couple of years ago at a Black Label Pro show where he wrestled Ethan Page, I believe. But Dusty Rhodes should always talk. Manny Fernandez, should talk a lot less. That was my takeaway from this promo.
The bionic elbow on his noggin right here. You see Manny Fernandez, the Raging Bull, hurt inside the ring right there, going into the Cobra, got the clutch on him right there. Dusty Rhodes and McAdream with a big wallop. Boom, baby. Boom, baby. Out go the light. 1, 2, 3. You looking at it right there. You're going to see the victorious. Look at the people. Look at the stands. Look at the tremendous. Look at that throng of people going crazy for the world tag team champion, the new champion, the Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez, Dusty Rhodes. We're going to defend these titles throughout this. Well, like I say, between now and Starcade, I'm going just as heavy as always. Right here tells it all. This the scene here, Bob Cowell, that tells it all. The changing of the guard. The changing of the guard. The new world tag team champion. We're ready for anybody at any time.
But we'll get more
Fernandez
we promos will later. Yeah.
We will, and he tries even harder to be Dusty Rhodes later in the hour.
The show goes to its first commercial.
I know where you were going with this because you sent me a text screen cap of this, and I was highly entertained. You watched the show about a day before I did after the randomizer pulled it.
Yeah, so it goes to commercial. We get just a graphic saying, more wrestling action, whatever. But the way that this graphic had every single font ever. I believe I texted you with a caption of, it's as if the graphics department was like, no, we can totally get every font into this graphic, and mission was accomplished.
Yes, it's similar to like when clip art first came out. It's we can put that on everything. Let's fill our GeoCities site with clip art. That was kind of what the effect was here, as they were telling us that after the break, the Long Riders will be in action. And they, in fact, are. The Long Riders are the team of Black Bart And here, the Cowboy, rather than as he would be known in the WWF as the Outlaw, it's Ron Bass.
So Ron Bass and Black Bart are known as the Long Riders, and they are managed by J.J. Dillon. I was not expecting J.J. Dillon to manage these guys.
No, I had no recollection of J.J. Dillon being a part of this act, but my God, was he needed? Was he effective here?
Of course, yeah.
These two men needed a touch of class, a touch of respectability, a touch of something interesting, and J.J. Dillon brought all of those things. Their opponents, a man named Tommy Lane,
sure,
who just had a very generic jobber look, and his partner, Bret Hart.
What? I have a bunch of question marks, and the camera is far away. This man is not facing the camera as he's introduced. I'm squinting, trying to say, no, can't be.
He never faces the camera. We never get a close-up. The entire match is from the hard camera. He's on the apron for 98% of the match with his back to the camera. He is a man that is about Bret Hart's height. He is not, he's not in completely different shape than Bret Hart. He has relatively short, but not completely short, curly black hair. He gets in. He does nothing. There's nothing about him that screams he moves like Bret Hart.
No.
And I'm sure this isn't him.
It can't be. There's no way.
This was so weird.
But it had me on the edge of my seat, trying to identify the man standing on the apron, because he was not in this match to begin. The match started with Bart and Tommy Lane.
We should mention, by the way, the Long Riders are the tag team champions of the Mid-Atlantic Territory here on this day in 1984. Again, as you mentioned, the match starts with...
Well, the NWA, just to be clear, the NWA World Tag Team Champions were Dusty Rhodes and Manny Fernandez.
Yes,
the Long Riders are the Mid-Atlantic Tag Team Champions, so champions of the territory here.
There has never been a greater example of when you're the champions of the world, that spans the breadth of all talent across the globe. When you're the champions of the Mid-Atlantic Territory, you are the champions spanning the talent all across a couple of states.
Correct.
And we can see the difference here. It funneled down into just the territory. Ron Bass and Black Bart are, they would be wonderful tag team champions in Smoky Mountain or Continental.
So Bart gets caught with a drop kick by Tommy Lane. He was surprised, quickly tries to beat Lane down, but Lane comes off the ropes with a crossbody. Bart almost caught him, but then slowly falls to the mat.
I loved that. That may have been my favorite non-top rope crossbody spot that I've ever seen in pro wrestling, because he lands the crossbody and then Black Bart is basically an oak tree with arms as he slowly struggles and falls to the mat. It looked great.
Yep.
It may be the first thing I've ever seen Black Bart do that I enjoyed.
This I didn't enjoy. He tagged in Ron Bass.
Yes. And shockingly, Ron Bass came in, and what did this man do? This man who I believe we saw on one of the MSG shows. We certainly saw him on that primetime wrestling show that had like 4 jobber versus jobber matches. Here he comes in, and his first offense is an eye rake.
It was,
and I was irate.
I was too, until Lane hits Bass with a hip toss. And yes. I have nothing but time for jobbers beating up the Long Riders. I am enjoying Tommy Lane beating up Bart and now Bass. This is great.
Yes, Tommy Lane is somehow the star of this jobber team when the man he is teamed with is named Bret Hart.
So Bass ends up throwing Lane into Bart's knee as he's on the apron, sticking his knee into the ring. Tags Bart in, drops him onto the top rope for a clothesline, neck breaker.
Yeah, the old hot shot. Then he actually hits a very nice swinging neck breaker that I would say was about an 11 on the shake, rattle, and roll scale, and then hits a nice leg drop. Black Bart actually in ring does not look anywhere near as bad as I expected him to. And if that sounds like I'm damning him with faint praise, I am.
Yeah, well, that ends because Bass is back in. Double team elbow Bass only gets a 2 count. Lane kicked out, and that got a pop from my couch. I was very excited. Lane kicked out.
You thought the upset could happen. You thought you might be looking at a 1-2-3 kid Razor Ramon situation here for Tommy Lane.
After Lane kicked out, he makes the dive, the valiant dive to his corner, and tags in Bret Hart. Bass immediately cuts him off. Power slam, runs. 3 count. That's it.
Yeah, Bret Hart, the Mid-Atlantic version of Bret Hart, runs directly into a boot while Ron Bass is in the corner. Ron Bass hits a running power slam for the win. File that move away later. We'd like to talk about moves of a show or moves of a territory. Just file that away. As Ron Bass pins this man, I just write in all caps, I don't think that was really Bret Hart losing to Ron Bass. I'm fairly confident in my opinion here.
No, and Lane had to be on the apron going, what the hell? I was doing fine. You're in 2 seconds.
Bret Hart. Just ruined
2
my
seconds,
match.
get power slammed and beaten. Tommy Lane, I would have been, he had to been livid here.
Should have gone all the way up north to Madison Square Garden and picked a fight with Bret Hart.
So Ron Bass is one of the guys where it's like, hey, maybe I didn't appreciate him as a child. Maybe
you think he might be
he really was good and I didn't realize it.
You thought he might be filed in the Nick Bockwinkel or Ernie Ladd or Dick Slater bin that we've opened and organized throughout 2 seasons of this podcast.
Turns out, no, he's as horrible as I decided he was as a child. So I am even still not a fan of Ron Bass.
Even here in 1984, a couple years, quite a few years earlier than the other shows that we've seen him on. Well, I guess maybe earlier and later. Either way, yeah, he's
in the best shape we've seen Ron Bass.
Yes, that does not translate to anything he does being any more impressive. But he physically looks a little bit better. He is a guy. He, again, as we've talked about with certain guys in different territories and different promotions, that when you see them being pushed, it says more or it implies more about the quality of the rest of the talent in the promotion than it does about how good that guy is, which is weird because Mid-Atlantic is not hurting for guys.
No,
but they just decided to give it a go here with the Long Riders. And yeah, it's not the last we'll see of them either.
Dick Slater joins Bob Caudle for an interview.
Does he ever? A man who creates controversy. Bob Caudle introduces him as, this is just a few short months after we saw him on that Mid-South show, correct? Or was that later? Was that 1985 or 1984?
That was 85.
Okay,
Mid-South.
So this is just before then. In any event, the idea here is that Dick Slater has returned to Mid-Atlantic from elsewhere. The most noteworthy thing here is he walks on the screen, Fashion Corner. Dick Slater, maybe the most well-dressed man I've seen this season. He is wearing an awesome blue and white tracksuit. It is not what I would expect Dick Slater to wear, but he is owning it. He looks fantastic. And the first thing he says when Bob Caudle questions him, he says, "What do you think? The wind just blew me in?" Great line. And then he talks about where he goes, trouble follows. And he is just, we've talked about it before, an awesome, unstable, grizzled, mean, scary dude. When you talked about, was Ron Bass a guy that we missed when we were younger and we're learning that he's great here? Dick Slater is that guy. We've talked about it before. A guy who you kind of just thought, oh, old guy, maybe he's okay, but it's nothing special, dime a dozen. Man, this podcast has taught us that he is anything but dime a dozen.
Yeah, he says, when I'm around, there's a lot of trouble. There's a lot of things happening. And Tully Blanchard comes in, interrupting Slater's promo. Slater keeps trying to do his interview, ignoring Blanchard. And Blanchard's trying to talk over him, ends up shoving him a little to get his attention. And Slater is just tired of Tully taking his interview time.
You can see him stewing as Tully keeps trying to do his promo. Tully says, it's both of our time. I've got half the time. And you see Slater kind of take a step away and he's shaking his head. You could just see him. He's the frustration is building.
Yes, it was like it's like when one of my children's trying to tell me a story and the other one comes in and tries to talk over them and tell me a completely separate story. That is exactly what Tully was doing to Dick Slater here. So Slater was tired of Tully taking his interview time, and he slaps Tully and walks off. Great stuff. He slaps him. He tells him to shut up, and he walks off. Tully was trying to spit out something about that he has $10,000 that Brian Adidas, or as he's called here in Mid-Atlantic, Brian Adidas, stole his money. But yes, Tully gets slapped by Dick Slater, told to shut up. And then the next thing we see before we go to commercial, very quickly, is images of police officers shepherding shopping carts full of money through a vault. Stacks of money coming out of the bank. Yeah.
I think this is the $10,000. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this is relating to what Tully was talking about.
Oh, no. This is $1 million for the $1 million challenge on Thanksgiving coming up. Ric Flair, the champion of the world, against Dusty Rhodes at Starrcade. We're told about Starrcade and this $1 million challenge for the heavyweight championship that they will have 3 judges. Boxer Smokin' Joe Frazier,
who will also serve as the referee for the match. So that's would an athletic commission sanction a referee / judge? That would be if you're a UFC fan, like let's say it's Randy Koter versus Chuck Liddell back in the glory days, and Big John McCarthy is not only a ref, but he is one of the 3 judges scoring the fight at the same time.
We're also told there'll be a Japanese guy to be named later.
Yes.
A race car driver named Kyle Petty.
Oh my God. So I freaked out here. In my childhood, in my prior life, I was a massive NASCAR fan. My life revolved around 2 things as a child: wrestling and racing. And Richard Petty, the most legendary NASCAR driver of all time, was my hero. And his son, Kyle Petty, was my other hero. I dressed up as Richard Petty for Halloween. I owned many a die-cast car of these 2 men. I had completely forgotten about Kyle Petty being one of the 3 judges. I was so excited here. Blast of nostalgia. We see Kyle Petty at the racetrack cutting a promo, obviously reading from cue cards, talking about how excited he was to be one of the 3 judges for this match at the Greensboro Coliseum. And then we go back to Bob Caudle, and he tells us about some upcoming matches. I believe these are matches that are going to be on Starrcade.
Yeah, he runs down the rest of the Starrcade card.
There's 2 matches in particular, though, that stand out to me as not particularly Starrcade worthy. We have a tuxedo street fight between number 1 Paul Jones, who we've talked about a few times on this podcast, how he may be the worst manager of all time, at least of classic days.
The Grand Wizard would like to a word with you here.
Yes. And his opponent, the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant. I assume that would go on after the world title match, as that's what happens
as it
with
did
Ric
Boogie Jam.
Exactly. When Ric Flair main events a major card for a world title, you have to follow it with a Boogie Woogie Man match. So I assume that will happen. The other match that they talk about, Bob Caudle tells us, it is the American Starship and a man named Buzz Avalanche Tyler taking on a team called the Zambui Express and Superstar Billy Graham in a 6-man slam challenge match where the way to win is to slam your opponent.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen, Superstar Billy Graham.
Yeah. I guess maybe he lost here, and then that's what sent him packing back to the WWF, to the desert, for him to cut that promo on Wrestling Challenge in 1986. Could it be? The best part about this is that Bob Caudle, with all the enthusiasm in the world, and I mean that sincerely, he is the most earnest, enthusiastic, friendly man you've ever seen on a pro wrestling show, says, and I quote, Yes, friends, all of that and more.
After commercial, we get Dick Slater versus Gary Royal. Amateur wrestling to open the match.
I can't believe you are not noting that these two men were wearing the exact same shade of blue.
Oh, we'll get there because I have other.
Dick Slater, and I know where you're going as well with that, but Dick Slater is only can be described as Cubby Blue if you're a Chicago Cubs fan. Cubby Blue trunks, the same blue trunks that he wore when he wrestled Greg Valentine at Boogie Jam when they were wearing identical gear. But
that I was outraged. That I had no time for. Go back to the Boogie Jam show to listen to me not only complain about matching gear when your opponents, you just what are you wearing tonight? What color? I will wear something different. Done.
Maybe the idea is to imply that, these guys obviously don't talk to each other. If they did, they would have coordinated the gear situation better. It's just a terrible coincidence.
And we almost made it through a podcast without mentioning Greg the Hammer Valentine.
Impossible. But Gary Royal here at least is wearing a singlet of sorts. He's just kind of a lumpy jelly bean of a man. And yeah, Dick Slater starts with a drop toe hold, a scramble. And I just note again that Dick Slater, he's so great and weird with the way he moves. And the more and more I see him, the less and less that I think of him as like a cheap copy of Terry Funk, which I believe the first time we saw him on this in season 1 of the podcast, and I had mentioned that was always kind of my thought of him as a kid. He's his own dude here, and he just so cool the way he moves around the ring.
Yeah, Slater pushes him into the corner, but doesn't punch him. We get a clean break. So this is, we've talked about miscast babyface Dick Slater before. This is an okay babyface version of Dick Slater.
Well, because he's edgier. It's not like he decided to become like WWF Hacksaw Jim Duggan, like we saw him as the rebel Dick Slater, where he was just this do-gooder. Here he's an untrustworthy, bad dude, but he has a few moments of not being completely reprehensible. And, it just as we'll see later on in the show, it just so happens that, he might end up hating other heels as much as he hates baby faces.
After some shots by Royal, Slater hits an elbow and a brainbuster.
Oh my God, that brainbuster. Oh, that was terrifying. He picks him up for a vertical suplex, and then he, I did not realize that Tomohiro Ishii was probably a Dick Slater fan, but that's the only thing I can take from this.
Right on his head.
Absolutely drops this man on his dome. This is a Shinya Hashimoto on Nobuhiko Takada brainbuster. If you listen to our Patreon podcast, you know what we're talking about. He murders him with this. Somehow, Gary Royal gets his foot on the ropes.
He got his foot on the ropes. I think, Bob Caudle was even horrified by this brainbuster and even more surprised that Royal did get his foot on the ropes. Royal then sends Slater into the ropes, puts his head down for a backdrop, but Slater drives an elbow into the man's spine, which is way cooler than just kicking the guy like everyone else does.
Yes, we've talked about that before. I think even on one of his appearances as the Rebel Dick Slater, I think it was in that tag match where he was teaming with Lenny Poffo opposite the Dream Team, where we had that flurry with him and Greg the Hammer Valentine calling back to their Mid-Atlantic cage match, where he did that move there. And yes, absolutely. It's for my money, the best counter to a back body drop, and he does it better than anyone else. I just have to go back, though. Just in your description, you didn't leave anything out. Dick Slater murdered this man with a brainbuster. Gary Royal gets his foot on the ropes. They get up, and Gary Royal is the man doing a move to Dick Slater. Fighting spirit here from Gary Royal as he attempted to Irish whip Dick Slater and go for a backdrop. Dick Slater, unpredictable as he is, hits the elbow, goes to the top then, and hits a top rope elbow smash to the head, goes for the cover, gets the 3 count, and then because he's Dick Slater and he's crazy, he goes to cover him again after the 3 count. He doesn't hit him. He doesn't try to hurt him again. He just wants to pin the man.
No, great stuff from Dick Slater, enjoying every minute of it. The opposite of Ron Bass.
In every conceivable way.
We see a graphic that says Buzz Tyler is coming up. Or I'm sorry, Buzz Tyler is coming up.
Yes,
okay.
That's the man that we were told earlier would be teaming with American Starship to take on the Zambui Express and Superstar Graham at Starrcade.
Yes, this is the Avalanche we will see in a minute. After commercial, the Long Riders and J.J. Dillon join Bob for an interview.
J.J. Dillon is fantastic here. He says Starrcade is getting close. The intensity in all of the arenas is getting stronger and stronger. He then congratulates Dusty Rhodes and Manny Fernandez on winning the tag titles, but it's clearly it's a backhanded compliment. He says Long Riders.
Wait a second. Wait. Now I want to interrupt here to set the scene. Now, when he's sarcastically congratulating the new World Tag Team Champions, the Long Riders are standing there in their belts. They have the Mid-Atlantic Championship belts on, and
those belts are so small.
They're
tiny. I wanted to pat them on the head and tuck them in.
And Bass has another title on his shoulder there, and I'm like, what is going on here? JJ tells us that Bass is the Mid-Atlantic champion. He's the champion of the territory.
Yes, Ron Bass is the Mid-Atlantic heavyweight champion and one half of the Mid-Atlantic tag team champions. None of those belts are impressive looking at all. Again, the tag titles, only way I can describe them is they are smaller than the original AEW Women's Championship, which is saying something. Then the Mid-Atlantic heavyweight title is just this mess of plates everywhere that look very thin, very cardboard. I can't even tell if they're attached to leather or if they're just connected by magnets.
It kind of has like a boxing championship vibe to it.
It has a boxing championship made by your second grader for a presentation if you are a boxer and your second grader takes you to school for show and tell.
I like the idea. I don't know because the plates have the different states that make up the Mid-Atlantic territory. It's got the center. I want to like it, and I think I like it, but you're selling me on maybe I don't like it. But
maybe if you like it so much, you can abandon your never-ending quest to own the NWA World Television title, the late 80s title.
Ring
and
used
you
late
can instead,
80s NWA Television Championship.
Maybe through the reach of this podcast, you can get a hold of Outlaw Ron Bass, and you can buy outright the Mid-Atlantic Championship off of him since you like it so much. I mean, he might also have the teeny tiny tag titles in his pocket.
Those I have no interest in. I have no interest in the Mid-Atlantic tag titles. No, thank you. But back to the interview. Now, we know that JJ tells us that he recaps the Long Riders' resumes here. They won a match at Starrcade, or as JJ calls it, Turkey Night.
Yes.
Bart says that everyone's too scared to wrestle them, and as Bart's cutting the promo, they just cut him off and go to commercial, which I howled with laughter.
There's a few other notes of this promo. Ron Bass, I actually did enjoy where he's like, "We're hungry. We're going to prove it to someone on Turkey Night. We want the money." I was amused there. Then, as you said, Bart is screaming about everyone is scared. And then as he calls out, quote, "all the geeks over there," he fade to black. He actually said all the geeks over there. That made me howl with laughter. We go to commercial. We come back, and Bob Caudle is joined by Ivan Koloff, Nikita Koloff, and David Crockett, the man that, if you are a fan of Jim Crockett Promotions,
I love David Crockett.
David Crockett for me is like the Dick Slater of announcers. When I, as a kid, would hear him, and then even years later, when I went back and watched him, it took me a long time to not hate having him on there, because while he's great at reacting. Like when there's something crazy happening, he just screams and he's upset. He has the weirdest cadence, the most difficult to follow manner of speaking of any wrestling announcer I've ever heard. He stumbles over his words quite a bit. It's all very earnest.
I don't mind.
I
don't mind David Crockett stumbling over his words when he's so excited about something or something so crazy that, he just can't get the words out because he's just so excited. He's all of the fans put together into one person with a microphone.
That's fine. But when he's talking or cutting a promo and it's very quiet and measured, and he has the same issues, then it's troubling. It's difficult, and that was the case here.
Well, here it was weird because it was serious, David Crockett, right? So David Crockett is he's always he's only serious whenever he's serious. It's because he's outraged by an angle,
by something that's happening in real time in front of him,
right? And so, but he's still got the energy level of the reaction of a David Crockett. Here, no, he is serious, all business, sent by his brother Jim Crockett Jr. to come lay down the law, recap what happened here, and give some news. And so he was all serious here. So it was a completely different David Crockett than I was used to.
Yes, he has a great line too, where they're trying to get over the heinous act. They're trying to really put over how bad this was. And the way David Crockett does that is just by saying a very good athlete was injured. And I'm wondering, are we about to see an attack or just an accident? What is about to happen? But they roll the tape, and it starts where what we saw earlier ended. And it is Ivan and Nikita Koloff in the cage with Don Kernodle after Ivan and Kernodle had just lost the tag titles. And they attack Don Kernodle.
They clothesline him with a chain. Nikita holds him as Ivan comes off the top with the chain. The Geeks try to come in and help, but they can't stop him. They do it again, trying to break Kernodle's neck with the chain. And then we hear he's a failure, he's a loser, Russia's number one.
Ivan was tremendous here. He says, in Russia, we send mistakes to Siberia. In America, we send mistakes out of wrestling. And then he goes on this whole rant about how, the weekend before their big title match, Don Kernodle, as he calls him, was at the lake with his girlfriend. He was not testing for films. Direct quote.
They were offended that he was out on a boat having a good time.
Yes. They wanted him to test for films. Which clearly, as he kept trying to spit this out, what he was trying to communicate was that he was not watching tape and training for this match. But the exact quote was testing for films. Then Nikita jumps in, and my note is Nikita Koloff's fake Russian accent.
Horrible.
Nowhere near as good as Ivan's here. He should have just gone Crusher Khrushchev, Barry Darso, and just not done it.
No, Nikita cuts a horrible promo.
Now look at Supreme Team in wrestling today. No tag team combination can beat Uncle Ivan and Nikita Koloff. Russian Bear, Russian Nightmare, Medical Dream, Raging Bull. How you say, go down, Kernodle, only example what happened to American, to all wrestlers who get in our way. Destruction, destroy, bun by bun, recrush.
David Crockett has more. They did more to Don Kernodle.
Yeah, there's a dramatic pause, and he says, that's not all of it. And then he goes on and tells us how Don is one of us, quote unquote. By that, I mean, I guess they're saying American. He says, despite what you think of him. And then they roll the tape. Don Kernodle out cold in the ring. The
EMTs are checking on him.
Or the ETMs, as David stammers and stumbles out. He then says, I don't understand what gets into people like the Koloffs. They're different. You don't say.
Carnota's still down in the ring, and his parents are brought into the ring to check on him.
Yes, they say that his parents are at every match in Greensboro supporting him, and now they have to see this.
So his parents are there. They're all distraught. He's not moving. It's a terrible scene. As we now cut back to action in the ring.
Speaking of terrible scenes,
Buzz,
we go to the ring.
Avalanche, Tyler versus Joel Eaton. Did I get that right?
Joel Deaton, who I
Deaton?
actually have some notes on. I remember Joel Deaton. But yeah, Buzz, Avalanche, Tyler. It's not quite Mark the Beast Goulian, but it's pretty close in that if you have in your mind, if you close your eyes and you think, what would a Buzz, Avalanche, Tyler look like? It's not going to be like this guy. He's short. He's not gigantic, but he's not in great shape. And he wears long black trunks that say Avalanche on the side. And he just has a normal dude haircut and kind of a small beard.
Yeah, no, he's got almost Conrad Thompson vibes. He's
yes, that's actually a very good comp. A very good, yeah.
It's all Avalanche here with a power slam and a quick win.
A running power slam for a quick win. That is the second one here on the very short and very few matches we've had so far on this show. Second time for a win there. I remember Joel Deaton in a couple of ways. First, he was the tag team partner of a guy named Billy Black, who, if you remember in the Aftermags, was getting a ton of press. They were basically calling Billy Black the American Jushin Liger. He was a high flyer, and he was a favorite of those magazines. Also, if you watch All Japan tapes from the 90s, Joel Deaton had quite a few tours, basically as a Western jobber foreigner. I believe he teamed. I've definitely seen him team, with Stan Hansen and lose. Never really got much of a push, but he at least was a little bit more featured than he was here in this absolute destruction at the hands of Buzz Tyler.
In like 5 seconds. So that's we didn't leave anything out here. That was it.
No, the bell rang. Buzz Tyler picked him up, power slammed him, and that was it. There was nothing else to this match.
Dusty Rhodes is back for another promo.
Out there in television land, I want Ric Flair to listen to this statement I'm making to him right now out there. I want him to listen good. You walked away from it, played your song, oh Lord, it's hard to be humble. Oh Lord, and walked away from it, got in your Cadillac, your fancy hat, your fancy coat, and left me standing there without me finishing talking to you about it. So now then, I want you live on the air. I want a confrontation with you. I want to see your training schedule. I want to see your workout schedule. I want to see what you're doing between now and then. You see what I'm doing, baby. There ain't no doubt about it. There ain't a doubt about what I'm doing right now. So you get yourself ready live here on TV. The people want to see us together. I was talking to you. You walked from it, played your music. I'm standing there holding the bag. So now then, Bob Cowell, let me tell you one time, Ric Flair, the American Dream, wants you right here live and in color on this TV, face to face, nose to nose. And let me hear what you got to say, because it's coming whether you like it or not. Duke said it. Ric Flair, where's Ric Flair? I want Ric Flair out here live and in color. I want it face to face. You see what I'm doing. I want to know what you're doing. That way I can plan how to spend my money.
He wants a confrontation before the match on TV with Ric Flair.
Yeah, apparently they had a confrontation in recent weeks, and Flair just walked out in the middle of Dusty cutting a promo on him, meaning just left, which is hilarious. He wants a live confrontation on air. He wants Flair's workout and training schedule. He says, "Where's Ric Flair? You see what I'm doing? I want to know what you're doing. That way I can plan how to spend my money."
Well, speaking of workout schedules.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
This is one of my favorite things I've seen in this season of Wrestling at Random. JJ Dillon is in front of Steamboat's Mid-Atlantic Gym with deli and juice bar. Now,
yes,
the gym
that is
juice
what it says
bar,
on the wall outside of the gym that JJ Dillon is standing. And by the way, JJ Dillon, since they're going to the gym, he is wearing a gray and red Adidas track jacket, half unzipped disgustingly. JJ Dillon also, he's a man. He's one of those guys that he hit a certain age. Like he hit looking 50 years old at like 35 years old and then kept looking that way for the rest of his life. Even like in a relatively recent appearance on national television on TNT, he didn't look that different than he does here in 1984.
It's amazing. We call it JJ Dillon syndrome when
Yes.
you look the same age your entire life. So yeah, he's standing in front of this Steamboat's Mid-Atlantic gym. The gym juice bar still thriving in 2021, but the gym deli has fallen out of favor. We don't really see those much anymore.
No, there's the nutrition and I guess the food that you would eat at a gym has changed a little bit. The way you get your carbs, get your protein before and after working out is a little bit different. But JJ says that he's on the hunt for a training site for the Long Riders leading up to Starrcade and perhaps beyond. And then in a very quiet and sober tone says that he thinks the Long Riders will be here soon. And then he says, I think I hear them coming now.
Yeah, so they pull up in their 80s fast car here.
Yeah,
very tiny
nice
car with big dudes in it, which made me chuckle when
Yes,
two big guys come out of this tiny car.
A blue Corvette, basically the same shade of blue as Dick Slater and Gary Royal were wearing earlier.
So they come to check out the facilities, and they're not wearing cowboy gear. They're wearing 80s tracksuits. How are they not in cowboy gear all the time? I was so mad.
Oh, I was hoping for cowboy or 80s tracksuits, but then with the pants tucked into cowboy boots and a cowboy hat. We did not get that mashup. Ron Bass is not happy when he sees that it's Steamboat's gym. JJ Dillon says that Steamboat is retired. And then Bart says, oh, so it's like we're helping out an ex-wrestler old-timer. And they all have a chuckle before they head in.
Yeah, Bass was all the fans here when he
Yes.
basically just said, not Ricky Steamboats. And yeah, no, JJ says he's practically retired. Inside they go, and working the desk is to greet the Long Riders and JJ Dillon is Vic Steamboat, legit brother of Ricky Steamboat. He's working the desk.
This made me so happy. Go back and listen to our world-class 1987 episode of the podcast, that episode of TV from World Class that we reviewed, where we talked about at length Vic Steamboat, marveled over the fact that he was not, in fact, just a fake, terrible knockoff brother of Ricky Steamboat, but is the legit shoot brother of Ricky Steamboat. And yes, here he is working the desk at his brother's gym. And oh man, you'll describe the scene, we both will. But as bad as we've said that Ricky Steamboat was as the NWA authority figure on TNA Wrestling, on the two episodes we've reviewed, both Weekly Pay-Per-View 7 and 8, one here on the free feed, one on our Patreon feed, Vic Steamboat makes Ricky Steamboat look like an Oscar-level actor. As far as talking, he is so bad here.
Oh, yeah, negative charisma, just no acting ability whatsoever, but it adds a little bit of charm to the scene.
Does. It absolutely does.
Bart likes vitamins, and he starts filling his bag with vitamins off the shelf.
They grab T-shirts that are supposed to be for everyone who comes in. They just start taking them all.
JJ's looking at the trophies, and he says, Rick Steamboat, Mr. Hawaii. And he's holding the trophy as Bass tosses JJ an apple. And JJ catches it, but as he does, he drops the trophy. It breaks on the floor. And Vic, this is where his bad acting comes into play, runs over, tells us that that's the first trophy Ricky Steamboat had ever won. And JJ says, send me the bill. And they start walking away. And Bass is appalled. Are you really going to pay for that? And he says, I said, send me the bill. I didn't say I'd pay for it. And all the bad guys chuckle as they walk into the gym. This scene was fantastic.
It absolutely was. Just so over the top and ridiculous. But JJ, Bass, and Bart were just the perfect, just no redeeming values human beings that you would want them to be here. We then cut to the health bar and deli.
The deli.
That's such a great combination, as we mentioned earlier. They grab some eggs out of the refrigerator. Black Bart starts juggling the eggs.
No, he took 2 eggs, and 2 eggs is not juggling. It's passing from one hand to the next.
Well, I was about to describe that. Yes. In his mind, he's juggling, but he has 2 eggs, which basically means he's making an exchange hand to hand, egg to egg over and over again, but then decides to up the ante and go into real juggling by adding a 3rd egg. That doesn't work out so well. The eggs fall to the floor. They just sort of shrug and say, it's time to work out, and leave. And then the old deli health bar counter guy comes over, and he is just appalled as he surveys the floor below him.
We cut back to the arena where J.J. Dillon is livid that they showed that tape. He is he's so mad.
He's screaming. He says, "You don't have the authority to show this tape." He's angry. I'm angry too, because I wanted to see more of the adventures here at Steamboat's gym. I wanted to go back and keep watching because I wanted to see Ricky Steamboat's reaction to seeing this video. I'm hooked as a weekly viewer now for Mid-Atlantic. Yeah, so this might even be better than Fuji Vice.
Yeah, this is great.
It's good stuff though. We then go to the ring, and because everybody on the show has to appear at least 3 times, it's Ivan and Nikita Koloff in the ring for a wrestling match as they take on the duo of Gene Ligon and Mike Fever. And the notes here from a fashion standpoint, you have 4 men of similar size. Ivan and Nikita are definitely bigger, but you have 4 men who are all wearing the exact same style singlet. Ligon and Fever are wearing black singlets. Ivan and Nikita are wearing very dark blue singlets.
No, this was multiple times.
You enjoy that?
This was multiple times on this show where the gear is too close. Opponents for opponents to be wearing. This is something that is a pet peeve of mine, and it should be easy to clear up. But they couldn't even, make sure that we didn't have too many power slam finishes. So they sure aren't checking to make sure that the gear isn't matching for everybody. Ivan starts out by throwing Ligon chest first into the ropes. So when you whip a guy into the ropes, you usually go kind of off your side holding the rope there and bounce off. But no, he went chest first into the rope.
Yes, he basically took
He
took the Bret Hart corner bump, the Bret Hart turnbuckle bump, but into the ropes.
Nikita's in with Mike Fever.
By the way, the real Bret Hart bump, not the Bret Hart we saw earlier.
Nikita goes right to a choke and just drives him down.
Like a choke clothesline. I thought he was going to go for the Russian sickle, but instead it's a double-handed choke, and then he just rides the guy all the way down, which actually was pretty cool. He then hits a hot shot, because that's another one that you have to hit, I guess, no matter who you are, if you're the non-jobber in a match here in Mid-Atlantic this week.
In the corner, tags Ivan in. He goes to the top rope using the knee to the back to drive Fever face first to the mat, gets the 3 count in quick fashion.
Yes, that move that we've talked about before, the finisher of Richard Morton after he made the turn and became one of the computerized men of the 90s with Alexandra York and the York Foundation, also a staple of Hiroyoshi Tenzan. But here, yes, that like riding knee drop to the back of the head off the top rope by Ivan Koloff gets the win.
We also saw, didn't we see in the Legends match at Slamboree,
saw Dick Murdoch.
Dick Murdoch do that move in terrifying fashion.
Yes, absolutely. So strangely enough, that move has found its way to this podcast many times through many different men. And I think each time we've been like, oh yeah, I didn't remember that guy did that move. So that is that. We then get a graphic for the TV title match coming up next after the break.
Before the match, we get an interview with Brian Adidas, like the tracksuits, like the shoes, Brian Adidas and Manny Fernandez. Adidas cuts a promo about the Rhodes Flair match, and they do not need you to cut promos on their behalf, Mr. Adidas.
Extremely good point. Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes.
They've got
most likely, they've got it under control. They can probably hype up this NWA World Title $1 Million Challenge match. Maybe the two greatest promos in the history of pro wrestling. Undoubtedly the two greatest promos of 1984. Brian Adidas here, though, is helping push this over the finish line.
Yeah, I was on the fence. I was on the fence until I heard Brian Adidas' take on it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get it now. That was all I needed to hear.
Exactly. Brian Adidas, by the way, who is seconds away from wrestling for the TV title. He's not concerned about that, though. He wants to tell the fans about Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. He says that he's glad he's going to be there because it's going to be the biggest event in sports history. We then have Manny Fernandez cutting a promo, which I believe at this point, the only reason Brian Adidas cut a promo was so that Manny's would sound better somehow. He says Dusty could kick back, but knows no slack. Going to be a lot of shaking and quaking going on. And this is where I noted he's trying so hard to be Dusty on the promos, but he's only getting like 1/3 of the way there.
No, I feel like Dusty told Manny before this promo, like, I dare you to go out there and do a Dusty Rhodes impression.
Yes,
I dare you. And Manny was like, I don't really do a good Dusty Rhodes. Maybe I shouldn't do a Dusty Rhodes impersonation on TV. And he's like, no, you can do it. Go ahead and do it. And this is what we got. He said a bunch of stuff. He'll be at Starrcade. It was not good.
Yes, this definitely felt like a backstage rib that made it to air for sure. It was not good, but it entertained me for the reasons you just described. We then are back with Bob Caudle again, and he's with David Crockett and the Russians again. And we go to footage from Greensboro again.
There's more footage that we have not seen yet. Yeah.
Yes, we're continuing to unspool the threads, the yarns of this tag title switch that took place. Now we see footage of the ropes being taken down, a stretcher being brought into the ring to take down the addled, prone Don Kernoodle as his parents are still worried. And we have Ivan in real time cutting a promo over this, making fun of Don Kernoodle's parents, saying, we don't cry because we don't have losers in Russia.
I love when they take the ropes down to make room for the stretcher. I think that's such an awesome touch. It's not like passing the guy under the bottom rope. It makes it a lot more dramatic. I thought that was fantastic.
But they still had the cage up, which I was amused by. It's
still
like,
gonna have to go through the door. Yeah,
this man may in fact be dead or near death, and we need to get to him quickly. But let's take the ropes that are inside of the cage down, but let's leave the cage up and make sure there's just that small opening for them to get through. But at least the EMTs, or ETMs, as David Crockett would call them, were there rather than just having like the Sergeant Slaughters of the world act as paramedics. So yeah, they did a good job really, really getting across the gravity of the situation and setting up the former Russian sympathizer, friend of Ivan Koloff and tag partner of Ivan Koloff, to come back as a conquering American.
No, the return of Don Kernoodle has to be amazing after how much they put into this and how serious they treated it. This was fantastic. I would love to see his return. And as the fighting babyface American, this would be against the Russians. I'm a weekly viewer now of this show. At the end of the footage, we cut back to the Russians, and Nikita is flexing. And man, he was such an impressive looking dude. Nikita Koloff he's like Goldberg of the times. I
was literally about to say the same exact thing. I was going to say, if you are not familiar with Nikita Koloff, particularly 1984, just imagine Goldberg in a singlet, and that gets you there as far as the look and the physically impressive nature. He's much more effective at flexing than he is at talking, and Ivan Koloff is great at talking in his own way here, so that is the formula they should stick with. But yeah, after that, we go to the ring where we see Tully Blanchard already in the ring in his magenta tights with the World Television Championship. And then here comes his opponent, Brian Adias in the exact same gear.
Oh my gosh! Seriously, I cannot stand it. Quick fashion corner, okay? We've talked about this already, but I'm gonna talk about it now. Both men are wearing dark red short trunks. Come on,
and they also they're physically very similar. White dudes of same height, similar build. Tully Blanchard a little hairier chested, but otherwise that's it.
Oh, this is one of my pet peeves of wrestling. I'll let it slide when one guy's got a singlet and one guy's got short trunks. Not here. Same dark red shade short trunks. This is ridiculous. This is unacceptable.
I will forgive Tully Blanchard in particular, though, because this moment, what happens at the beginning of this match, I loved it so much that I created the GIF for this week's podcast. If you follow us on Twitter, you've seen it already. So Tully gets introduced, as we said.
I love this. I'm sorry. I'm so excited.
He has the TV title. Brian Adias comes charging full steam into the ring. As he gets through the ropes, Tully Blanchard casually takes off the TV title. As Brian Adias is in the ring now and charges towards Tully, he just casually, again, whacks him in the leg with the belt as Adias is lunging toward him. I was howling with laughter. I had to, as I've had to only a few times throughout both seasons of this podcast. I had to pause this because I was laughing so hard. I rewound it multiple times, and clearly I wanted to watch it on a loop over and over again if I created a GIF accomplishing that exact thing of this moment. So great.
Yes, I'm glad we both rewound it, because that's the first thing I did after I watched that. I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so great. He whipped him right into the knee with the belt, and I've rewound it, watched it again. Adias just full steam ahead, charging as hard as he can, and Blanchard just totally nonchalant about it, takes his belt off and whips him with it, and this is how the match starts.
The best part about this is I don't know that I've ever seen in just a span of a couple seconds a better distillation of who the star and who the jobber is
yes.
in a match than that moment. And again, if for some reason you do not follow us on Twitter or Instagram, go on social media, particularly on Twitter, go to @WrestleRandom. It's not wrestling at random, it's @WrestleAtRandom on Twitter. And find the post from recently and see this and watch it over and over again. It will bring you as much joy as it brought us. I personally guarantee it.
So Adias is holding his knee, and then both men just start trading punches. Adias knocks Tully down with an elbow and a shoulder block, but Tully sidesteps Adias and uses his own momentum to throw him into the turnbuckles.
We should, by the way, we have not mentioned this. We've talked about Brian Adias/Adidas, but you may recall that name may sound familiar to you. If you go back and watch World Class Championship Wrestling, or go back and listen to the podcast where we watched World Class Championship Wrestling from 1987 and reviewed it, Brian Adias was like in the depleted dark days of World Class, the top heel that Kevin Von Erich was going after. He was even less physically impressive than he looked here with his leopard print pants. He's much more suited here to be a jobber against Tully Blanchard than he was to be one of two heels that a promotion was revolving around just 3 years later.
Dick Slater has joined the commentary with Bob Caudle. Tully starts the beatdown, going back to work on the leg. We hear a lot of people would beat up their grandma for $10,000.
Yes, I wrote that down all caps as well. Dick Slater, tremendous here on the call, just being Dick Slater.
Suplex by Tully. We can't tell if Adias kicked out or Tully picked him up.
Yeah, neither can Bob Caudle. He's very upset at the possibility that this happened. And my note there is, my God, Bob Caudle would not have survived All-Star Wrestling in 1982 if he couldn't handle this maybe lift up. He wouldn't have made it through that show that we reviewed.
Tully puts on a half crab on the bad leg. Slater makes his way to the ring.
Well, he does. First, Brian Adias actually does a great job selling that he's in excruciating pain here in this half crab after getting whipped in the knee with the title belt -2 seconds into the match. Dick Slater says, "This is getting too far-fetched," is the exact quote, and says he needs to go down to ringside, and he does exactly that.
So he's standing at ringside. He throws a towel into the ring. Match is over. Tully wins. Still TV champion.
The towel that he's had around his neck all show. He's still wearing the sweet blue tracksuit, by the way. He throws the towel in, and Tommy Young, as you said, rules that Tully is the winner. I don't get it, though. Was Dick Slater the recognized second for Brian Adias? I don't think so.
No, so...
Like if a fan brought a towel and threw it in?
It's I think everybody was okay with this.
Yes, I'm putting too much thought into this.
So yeah, the match is over. Tully's still the TV champion. Tully then he goes off the top when Slater turned his back, and he hits Slater from behind with the elbow.
The exact same top rope elbow smash that Dick Slater used earlier to win his match.
They start fighting, and Slater starts a comeback, throws Tully outside. This was an awesome brawl here.
Slater's throwing his awesome wild left and right hand windmill punches. They're fighting on the floor. Crowd's going crazy. Tully Blanchard retreats
after an atomic drop on the outside.
Yes,
then he runs away.
I will say that, like, an atomic drop on the outside, that's another one of those moves, like locking on a figure four on the floor. That it would not make it hurt anymore, but for some reason, because you did it on the floor, it does. But yes, great brawl. And then Slater goes back to the interview area, as you do, and cuts a promo on Tully Blanchard.
You got a big mouth, Tully Blanchard! I told you I was here to pick a fight, didn't I?
You did.
And I picked one, didn't I?
Sure.
And I'm probably going to pick a lot more, too, before it's all over with. Hey, Blanchard. I don't like you running your mouth. Don't you ever put your hands on me again. Because remember this, you can knock me down, but there ain't no damn building anywhere or anybody that's gonna keep me from coming up, and it's gonna be able to hold me and you in that ring.
All right, fans. Boy, what a wild finish that is, as Brian Adias is being helped and carried out of the ring. Tully Blanchard and Dick Slater. It all started right here, and that's going to wrap it up for this week.
Yeah, he cuts a promo. He wants Tully Blanchard. Bob Caudle says that's all for this week, as the show goes quickly off the air. I loved Mid-Atlantic Wrestling. This was my first time watching a full episode of Mid-Atlantic. We watched, the Boogie Jam show. That was great as a fun house show, major event feel. But for a weekly TV show, I thought the production was top notch for this time period. For 1984, it looked just as good as shows that we were looking at. It compared to other shows that were out in 85. This is significantly better. Absolutely a great production. The matches themselves, they
were nothing.
The squashes were so short. I like a good squash. These ones seemed, a little rushed. The jobbers weren't as comically horrible. We love our jobbers, with ill-fitting gear and untrained. So
yeah, these guys were too competent, and they looked like they owned their own gear. So 2 strikes. Yeah.
So those are things that I didn't care for. I would have liked, a little longer, but I think that the way that they caught you up on all of the angles, we knew all the champions, and we had, this was the big news, the big angle, This is the stuff we're building around. We knew everything that was going on with the Russians, everything that was going on with the Long Riders, and starting a feud with Steamboat for the Mid-Atlantic title. All great stuff. Easy to follow, easy to jump in. We parachuted into this, and I was caught up, and I was ready to watch again next week.
Yeah, absolutely. To me, a few things set this apart from the other territory shows that we've watched. One, which I mentioned earlier, was I love that this was in an actual arena versus the TV studio. There's a charm to the TV studio for sure, but this just had it had more life and felt more like an actual wrestling event, even though you just had very short squash matches. That was tremendous. And then, as you said, the format of the show, the way they got everyone got everyone caught up was very well done. To me, this was, I would say, of the territory shows that we've watched as far as weekly TV, it's right there with that Championship Wrestling from Florida show. Yeah. And I think this, even though the matches weren't quite as good, this was better. And I think maybe it was just circumstantial because it was building to a show that we would actually be able to watch if we were going back and watching this in weekly fashion. We've talked about before, one of the frustrations of going back and watching almost any territory is they're building to the major arena cards that, while it's great for the people in real time that would be able to go to those shows, if you're going back years later and watching, you're never going to get to see those. Those don't really exist anywhere in full. You would maybe see clips on the next week's show. This was building to Starrcade 1984, major event that, in different ways, shapes, and forms, a lot of people could see and you could go back and watch now. So I think that helped as well.
Absolutely. So thumbs up if you want to experience more Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. Your podcast partner on the Big Audio Nightmare, Mike Sempervive, does a podcast covering Mid-Atlantic, the Mid-Atlantic Pod. Go subscribe to that and listen to that as well.
Yep, and check out his Twitter account as well, the Mid-Atlantic Pod Twitter account. Daily great content there. If you're interested in Mid-Atlantic, you'll be able to get a lot more from there. As far as favorite things go, it's hard for me to ever not say Dusty Rhodes promo is my favorite thing on this show, but I'm actually going to go a different route. I think the best thing on this show was the J.J. Dillon and the Long Riders at Steamboat's gym.
There's no doubt that is the correct answer. Yeah, that was so much fun. What a great skit and great vignette. Absolutely. The worst
thing was fake Bret Hart.
that is acceptable. I think it's Nikita Koloff's promos. That was pretty terrible.
His Russian accent. Having to watch Ron Bass.
Having to watch
in the ring. He redeemed himself in the skit.
He did, but boy, Ron Bass, when he came in and did an eye rake, I'm just like, I almost turned off the show.
Yeah, PTSD from Ron Bass times past.
All right, and with that, we're going to wrap it up here. I do want to encourage everyone to interact with the show. Adam told you about the Twitter earlier, @WrestleAtRandom. That's the best way to interact with the show. If you're not on social media, you can also interact with us via email, wrestlingatrandom@gmail.com. And make sure that if you want to hear bonus content, if you want more than just the weekly shows here, there's a whole nother feed with hours and hours and hours of content you haven't heard yet. And so that's all via our Patreon, patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom. You sign up. I'm going to send you some stickers. I'll send you an early 90s WCW trading card, and you can get hours and hours and hours of bonus content. In addition, we have other tiers. You can sign up to be the randomizer.
Yes, that is in fact true. And we've had quite a few people do that already. We have multiple regular subscribers, regular supporters at that level. And I would say probably at least a third, if not more, of the shows so far on the Patreon feed side are people who have chosen a show for us to watch. Sometimes it's because it's one of their favorite shows and they want to bestow us greatness to watch. There have been an occasion or two where people have gone the other route and had something they've watched that they thought was truly terrible, and they wanted to hear what we thought of it and inflict that pain on us In all seriousness, though, we welcome both. Great shows are awesome to watch. Terrible shows can be great to watch, particularly if we're paid to do so. So feel free to do either. We're happy and entertain all requests.
That's right. And we also have a tier for T-shirts as well. These are very tasteful wrestling shirts. You can see
Absolutely. Those. I always say they're T-shirts you could wear to a concert.
Absolutely.
To a small venue at a dive bar. And really, I own a lot of wrestling T-shirts. The only one I would be caught dead in at a concert would be Wrestling at Random.
And with that, if you can't support the show financially via the Patreon, we get it. In these times, not a problem. We still need your support, though. Tell your wrestling fan friends about the show. That's the best way to help us out. Subscribe to the show. Show your friends how to subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends that used to be wrestling fans about the show. Maybe they want to take a trip down memory lane with us as well.
Yeah, and make sure, in addition, to tell your former friends who you know are or were wrestling fans about the podcast. I mean, maybe it was a Russians and Don Kernodle type of breakup of your friendship. I hope that sending them the podcast can mend fences. I certainly hope they don't hit you with a chain. I hope ETMs and your parents don't have to come to your rescue after sharing the podcast with them. I think it'll turn out okay, though.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank Adam for joining us.
Yes, thank you, Jeremy. Another territory to cross off the list thanks to the randomizer, and I would not be at all upset if the randomizer gives us another Mid-Atlantic episode down the line.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. Talk to you again